I sat confidently in the mahogany-paneled boardroom of Pinnacle Tech Solutions, surrounded by department heads I'd collaborated with for 3 years. The quarterly review meeting buzzed with typical pre-presentation energy until CEO Marcus Blackwell burst through the glass doors. His face burned crimson with unmistakable fury as he clutched crumpled printouts in his white-knuckled fists. Without any preamble or explanation, he thrust his finger directly at me like a weapon and announced I was fired for insubordination and undermining company authority. The spacious room fell into absolute silence. 20 pairs of stunned eyes locked onto the unfolding drama. I calmly collected my leather notebook, rose gracefully from my chair, and walked toward the exit, while Marcus continued his explosive tirade about respect and corporate hierarchy. The click of my heels echoed through the marble hallway as I made my way toward my corner office, my mind racing to process what had just occurred. 3 years of dedication, innovation, and results had been obliterated in 30 seconds of Marcus's rage. I am Cassidy, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Pinnacle Tech Solutions, and I had single-handedly brought this company its 3 most valuable clients worth $12 million annually in recurring revenue. Marcus had recruited me personally after I transformed my previous company's failing sales division from a $2 million liability into a $15 million profit center. The memory of 2 weeks ago crashed back into my consciousness as I reached my office door. I had discovered something that changed everything about my perception of Marcus and this company. While reviewing quarterly financial reports for client presentations, I noticed disturbing patterns in our project billing. Marcus had been systematically inflating project costs to clients by 40%, then funneling the excess payments through carefully constructed shell companies that led directly back to his personal accounts. When I first uncovered this scheme, my initial instinct was to protect both the company and Marcus from what I assumed was an oversight or accounting error. I had requested a private meeting with him, bringing detailed spreadsheets and documentation. I offered to help restructure our pricing models ethically, suggesting we could maintain profitability while building stronger client trust through transparent billing practices. His reaction had been volcanic. Marcus exploded across his desk, his face contorting with rage as he called me naive and idealistic. He threatened my position, my reputation, and my future in the industry if I ever questioned his business methods again. The conversation ended with him ordering me never to access those financial records again and warning me that my job security depended entirely on my silence and compliance. But Marcus had fundamentally misunderstood the relationships I had cultivated within Pinnacle Tech Solutions. Over 3 years, I had built genuine professional connections across every department, not through political maneuvering or strategic networking, but through authentic collaboration and mutual respect. Engineering Director Jake Martinez had come to value my technical insights during product development meetings. Unlike many sales directors who promised impossible features to close deals, I worked closely with his team to understand actual capabilities and realistic timelines. This collaboration had resulted in products that consistently exceeded client expectations rather than falling short of overpromised specifications. Marketing Director Sarah Chen appreciated how I shared detailed client feedback that helped her team craft more effective campaigns. Rather than hoarding client intelligence for personal advantage, I regularly provided insights that improved our overall market positioning and messaging effectiveness. Operations Director Tom Richardson trusted my process improvement suggestions because I had spent time understanding his workflow challenges rather than simply demanding faster turnaround times. My recommendations had streamlined several key processes, reducing delivery times by 30% while improving quality control. Finance Director Lisa Wong respected my budget accuracy and detailed reporting. Unlike other department heads who regularly exceeded their allocated expenses, I consistently delivered results within or under budget while providing comprehensive documentation of every expenditure. As I began removing personal items from my desk drawers, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my office. Jake Martinez appeared in my doorway first, his expression grim but determined. He stepped inside without invitation and announced that he was submitting his resignation, effective immediately. Before I could respond, Sarah Chen materialized beside him, making the same declaration. Tom Richardson arrived next, followed closely by Lisa Wong, then HR Director Amy Foster. Each of them stated clearly and definitively that they were resigning their positions at Pinnacle Tech Solutions. The exodus was happening in real time, and I realized with growing amazement that they had been coordinating this response. Jake explained what I had never suspected during my years at Pinnacle. The 5 department heads had been quietly meeting for months, discussing their growing concerns about Marcus's leadership style and ethical standards. They had witnessed his treatment of other employees, his disregard for company policies when convenient, and his increasingly erratic decision-making processes. They had agreed among themselves that if Marcus ever crossed the line with me, specifically, they would all leave together. Their reasoning was both personal and professional. They respected my integrity, valued our collaborative working relationship, and recognized that my client relationships were essential to Pinnacle's continued success. More importantly, they had come to understand that Marcus's behavior was escalating towards something unsustainable, and my public firing represented the breaking point they had been anticipating. As we packed my personal belongings together, Marcus stormed down the hallway toward my office. His voice boomed through the corridors as he ordered each of them to return to the boardroom immediately. He demanded they abandon this foolish loyalty and remember their obligations to the company and their own careers. None of them acknowledged his presence. They continued methodically helping me organize my files, pack my awards and photographs, and gather my personal office supplies. Marcus's face progressed from red to purple as he realized that his authority had completely evaporated. The 5 people who managed every crucial operational aspect of Pinnacle Tech Solutions were treating him like he was invisible. The power dynamic in that moment was unmistakable. Marcus stood in my doorway shouting orders that carried no weight while the real operational leadership of his company calmly prepared to walk away. I felt a surge of gratitude mixed with apprehension as I began to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening around me. The parking garage beneath Pinnacle's downtown office building felt like an underground bunker as Legal Director Patricia Hawkins approached me with the urgency of someone carrying dangerous intelligence. Patricia had worked at Pinnacle for 7 years, maintaining a reputation for meticulous attention to detail and unwavering professional ethics. Her typically composed demeanor was replaced by visible anxiety as she glanced around to ensure our conversation remained private. Patricia's revelation hit me like a physical blow. The Department of Justice had contacted her yesterday afternoon with inquiries about Marcus's financial activities and business practices. Federal investigators were building a comprehensive case involving wire fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering charges. The FBI had been monitoring several of Marcus's shell companies for months, gathering evidence of systematic client billing fraud and money laundering operations. What terrified Patricia was that as legal director she could face charges herself if prosecutors determined she had knowledge of illegal activities and failed to report them. She had been documenting Marcus's questionable decisions for over a year, creating a paper trail that might protect her from prosecution, but would certainly destroy Marcus when investigators discovered it. My phone began vibrating incessantly as we talked. The first call was from David Kumar, CEO of Global Tech Industries, one of my 3 major clients. David's company represented $4 million in annual revenue for Pinnacle, and his tone conveyed barely controlled anger. He had learned about my termination through his network of industry contacts within 2 hours of the boardroom incident. David demanded an emergency meeting to discuss Global Tech's partnership with Pinnacle. He expressed serious concerns about the company's stability and leadership, questioning whether they could continue their relationship under current management. His trust had been built with me personally over 18 months of successful project delivery, not with Pinnacle as an institutional entity. The second call came from Elena Rodriguez, president of Meridian Industries. Elena's company contributed $5 million annually to Pinnacle's revenue through a complex software development partnership. She was equally direct about her dissatisfaction with my departure and threatened immediate contract termination unless Marcus could provide satisfactory explanations for his decision-making process. The third call was from Robert Chen, operations director at Apex Corporation. Robert's company represented $3 million in annual contracts, and he was scheduling a comprehensive review of their partnership agreements with Pinnacle. He made it clear that their continued business relationship was contingent upon understanding the circumstances surrounding my termination. While I fielded these calls, word about the morning's events was spreading throughout Pinnacle's office building like wildfire. Junior employees who had witnessed the department head exodus began submitting their own resignation letters. The accounting team, emboldened by the changing dynamics, began questioning financial discrepancies they had been previously ordered to ignore without explanation. Customer service representatives reported that existing clients were calling specifically to inquire about my status and availability. Several smaller clients indicated they would be reevaluating their contracts based on personnel changes at Pinnacle. The company's institutional relationships were beginning to unravel as clients realized their primary point of contact and trust had been severed. Marcus attempted damage control by calling an emergency company-wide meeting in the main conference room. He promised immediate salary increases and promotion opportunities for remaining employees. He announced expanded benefits packages and increased vacation time. His desperation was palpable as he tried to stem the exodus of talent and maintain operational stability. However, his strategy backfired catastrophically when he attempted to justify my termination. Marcus announced to the assembled employees that I had been fired for financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary responsibility. He suggested that my client relationships had been inappropriate and that my departure was necessary to protect the company's reputation and legal standing. Patricia Hawkins immediately stood up and publicly contradicted Marcus's statements. As legal director, she stated definitively that no misconduct allegations had ever been raised against me through official channels. She confirmed that all financial audits had consistently shown my department's complete compliance with company policies and federal regulations. Patricia's contradiction created a moment of electric tension in the conference room. Marcus's credibility crumbled visibly as employees realized he was fabricating justifications for his actions. The meeting deteriorated rapidly as staff members began asking pointed questions about the real reasons for the morning's upheaval. I began to understand that my position at Pinnacle had been far more influential than I had realized. The department heads who had resigned with me represented approximately 60% of the company's operational knowledge and institutional memory. Their collective departure would create immediate crises in engineering development, marketing campaigns, operational logistics, financial management, and human resources administration. More significantly, my client relationships had been built on personal trust and professional competence rather than corporate loyalty. The clients were making it clear that their business partnerships were with me individually, not with Pinnacle as an organization. This realization shifted my perspective from victim to potential victor as I began to comprehend the leverage I actually possessed in this situation. The afternoon brought additional revelations as Patricia shared more details about the federal investigation. Investigators had been tracking money flows through Marcus's shell companies for 8 months, building a comprehensive picture of systematic fraud. They had identified inflated billings to at least 12 major clients, totaling over $3 million in fraudulent charges during the previous 2 years. The investigation had expanded beyond financial crimes to include potential violations of federal racketeering statutes. Marcus's pattern of fraudulent billing, combined with his use of multiple shell companies and interstate money transfers, elevated his crimes from simple embezzlement to complex organized criminal activity. As I drove home that evening, my mind was spinning with the implications of everything I had learned. Marcus had not simply fired me in a moment of poor judgment. He had unknowingly triggered a sequence of events that would expose his criminal activities and destroy the company he had built through illegal means. The power he had wielded so arrogantly that morning was already disintegrating around him. The next morning brought revelations that transformed my understanding of Marcus's betrayal from professional misconduct to personal theft. Patricia Hawkins had requested an urgent breakfast meeting at a quiet downtown diner, arriving with a briefcase full of employment documents and financial records that would change everything about how I viewed my tenure at Pinnacle Tech Solutions. As Patricia spread the paperwork across our corner booth table, she explained that her detailed review of my employment contracts had uncovered systematic fraud targeting me personally. Marcus had never paid the contractual signing bonuses I had earned for landing major clients. According to my original employment agreement, I should have received $50,000 for each client contract exceeding $1 million annually. With 3 major clients, my unpaid bonuses totaled $150,000 plus accrued interest. More shocking was Patricia's discovery that Marcus had forged payment documentation to conceal this theft. He had created false bank transfer records, fabricated accounting entries, and even generated fake tax documents showing payments that never occurred. This wasn't accounting negligence or oversight. This was deliberate, sophisticated fraud designed to steal money I had legitimately earned through exceptional professional performance. Patricia explained that these forged documents would constitute additional federal crimes, including mail fraud, wire fraud, and tax document falsification. Marcus had compounded his billing fraud with systematic wage theft, creating multiple avenues for criminal prosecution. The complexity of his deception demonstrated premeditation and criminal intent that would significantly increase his potential prison sentence. My phone rang as Patricia explained the legal implications. David Kumar from Global Tech had requested an immediate lunch meeting to discuss what he described as urgent business matters. His tone suggested this conversation would be different from yesterday's angry phone call. He had moved from expressing concern to taking concrete action based on the situation at Pinnacle. David chose an upscale restaurant in downtown's financial district, and his proposal completely recalibrated my understanding of my professional options. Global Tech wanted to terminate their contract with Pinnacle immediately and establish a direct consulting relationship with me personally. He offered a 3-year consulting agreement worth $1 million annually, providing the same services I had delivered through Pinnacle, but without the institutional intermediary. David's reasoning was straightforward business logic. Global Tech's partnership with Pinnacle had been successful specifically because of my project management technical understanding and customer service excellence. Marcus's behavior raised serious questions about Pinnacle's stability, ethical standards, and future viability. David preferred to eliminate the uncertainty by working directly with the individual who had actually delivered results. Similar conversations followed throughout the week with Elena Rodriguez from Meridian Industries and Robert Chen from Apex Corporation. Both companies expressed identical concerns about Pinnacle's leadership and made comparable offers for independent consulting relationships. Meridian offered $800,000 annually, while Apex proposed $750,000 for ongoing consulting services. The combined value of these 3 consulting offers totaled $2.5 million annually, more than double my Pinnacle salary, and representing revenue that Marcus would permanently lose as a consequence of his decision to fire me. The irony was overwhelming. His attempt to demonstrate power had immediately resulted in losing the very business relationships that had made his company valuable. Meanwhile, Pinnacle's operational crisis was accelerating beyond Marcus's ability to manage. Software vendors had begun demanding immediate payment for overdue invoices that Marcus had been ignoring while diverting client payments to his personal accounts. Critical business applications were facing service interruptions as vendors implemented payment holds. Office lease managers arrived at Pinnacle's headquarters with formal eviction notices for unpaid rent dating back 4 months. Marcus had been redirecting lease payments to fund his lifestyle and shell company operations, assuming he could cover the shortfall before anyone noticed. The building management company was initiating legal proceedings to recover back rent and terminate Pinnacle's occupancy agreement. The company's business banking accounts were frozen when federal investigators obtained court orders as part of their expanding criminal probe. Marcus discovered he couldn't access operating funds needed for payroll vendor payments or basic business expenses. Employees were notifying him that their paychecks had been rejected by their banks due to insufficient account funds. Marcus's response to these mounting crises revealed the full extent of his psychological breakdown. He began calling me repeatedly throughout each day, alternating between aggressive threats and desperate pleas for assistance. His voicemails progressed from angry demands that I return to work immediately to panicked begging for me to help him save the company from destruction. His messages became increasingly incoherent as the week progressed. He offered me a full partnership in Pinnacle Tech Solutions, then threatened to sue me for contractual violations, then pleaded with me to convince my former colleagues to return to their positions. His emotional volatility was becoming obvious to everyone who interacted with him. Local business media had discovered the story of Pinnacle's dramatic implosion, and reporters began contacting me for interviews about the company's situation. The Business Journal's preliminary article described Marcus's firing of key personnel as a strategic miscalculation that had triggered massive client defections and operational collapse. They portrayed me as a successful executive who had been victimized by poor leadership decisions. I declined all interview requests, maintaining professional discretion while allowing the facts to speak for themselves. This strategic silence actually enhanced my reputation within the business community, as colleagues interpreted my restraint as evidence of maturity and integrity under pressure. The contrast between Marcus's public breakdown and my composed response was becoming obvious throughout our professional network. Industry contacts began reaching out with expressions of support and business opportunities. Several competing firms inquired about my availability for consulting projects or permanent positions. Executive recruiters added me to their priority contact lists for senior-level opportunities. By the end of the week, I realized that Marcus's attempt to destroy my career had actually elevated my professional profile and market value. His corruption was being exposed, while my reputation was being validated. The power dynamic between us had completely reversed, with Marcus facing criminal prosecution while I was receiving offers for lucrative business partnerships. The vindication felt profound, but I understood that this was just the beginning of a longer process. Marcus still controlled Pinnacle's assets and corporate identity, even as his ability to operate the business crumbled around him. The full resolution would require strategic thinking and careful planning to ensure that justice was served and my professional interests were protected. Sarah Chen's suburban home felt like a war room as I arrived for what I had expected to be a casual dinner with former colleagues. Instead, I discovered that Jake Martinez, Tom Richardson, Lisa Wong, and Amy Foster were already assembled around Sarah's dining room table, which was covered with laptops, legal documents, and business planning materials. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and determination, as I realized this gathering represented something far more significant than a support meeting. Jake looked up from his laptop screen and announced that they had been secretly developing this contingency plan for the past 6 months. They had been quietly documenting Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior, unethical decisions, and operational failures, while simultaneously researching the legal and financial requirements for establishing an independent consulting firm. Their foresight was remarkable. They had anticipated that Marcus's leadership would eventually create a crisis that would force them to choose between their integrity and their employment security. Rather than waiting for that crisis to overwhelm them, they had proactively prepared for the transition to independence. Tom Richardson, the former operations director, had been researching business incorporation procedures, regulatory requirements, and startup logistics. He had identified the necessary licenses, insurance policies, and operational systems needed to launch a full-service consulting firm. His detailed planning included office space options, technology, infrastructure requirements, and staffing projections. Lisa Wong, the former finance director, had been developing comprehensive financial projections and funding strategies. She had calculated startup costs, operating expenses, and revenue requirements for a sustainable business model. More importantly, she had secured preliminary commitments for initial funding from their combined professional networks and personal investments. Amy Foster, the former HR director, had been researching employment law benefits administration and talent acquisition strategies. She had developed employee handbook templates, compensation structures, and recruitment protocols designed to attract top-tier talent from Pinnacle and other competing firms. Sarah Chen, the former marketing director, had been designing brand identity market positioning and client acquisition strategies. She had created preliminary marketing materials, website concepts, and social media strategies to establish immediate market presence and credibility. They revealed that they had already filed incorporation papers for Nexus Solutions, LLC, with me designated as Chief Executive Officer and each of them holding equity stakes as founding partners. The business structure provided them with collective ownership while recognizing my client relationship expertise as the primary driver of company value. Their preparation extended beyond business planning to include talent acquisition from Pinnacle's remaining workforce. 23 of the company's most skilled employees had been quietly approached about joining Nexus Solutions once it became operational. These conversations had occurred carefully over several months, ensuring that key personnel would be available when the transition opportunity arose. The group had identified specific employees whose expertise was essential for operational success. The entire customer success team had agreed to join Nexus, recognizing that client satisfaction would be their primary competitive advantage. Half of the engineering department had committed to the transition, bringing crucial technical knowledge and project development capabilities. Most significantly, they had already begun preliminary discussions with my 3 major clients about transitioning their service relationships from Pinnacle to Nexus Solutions. These conversations had been exploratory, rather than definitive, but the client feedback had been overwhelmingly positive about the prospect of working with our team through a new organizational structure. The combined client contracts represented $15 million in annual revenue, providing immediate financial stability for Nexus Solutions, while devastating Pinnacle's remaining business prospects. David Kumar from Global Tech had been particularly enthusiastic about the transition, expressing confidence in our team's ability to deliver superior service through a more agile organizational structure. Jake presented their preliminary technology infrastructure plan, which included cloud-based project management systems, secure communication platforms, and collaborative development tools. The technology foundation would allow Nexus to operate more efficiently than Pinnacle while providing better service to clients and more satisfying work environments for employees. Sarah outlined their marketing strategy, which positioned Nexus Solutions as the ethical alternative to traditional corporate consulting firms. Their brand messaging emphasized transparency, client partnership, and employee ownership, rather than hierarchical management and profit maximization. This approach would appeal to clients who had grown frustrated with traditional corporate structures. Amy detailed their employee benefit plans, which included equity participation, flexible work arrangements, and professional development opportunities that exceeded industry standards. Their compensation philosophy prioritized employee satisfaction and retention over short-term cost minimization, creating a sustainable foundation for long-term growth. Lisa presented financial projections showing that Nexus Solutions could achieve profitability within 6 months and sustainable growth thereafter. Their lean operational structure combined with premium service pricing would generate healthy profit margins while maintaining competitive pricing for clients. As they explained their comprehensive planning, I felt a mixture of amazement, gratitude, and excitement about the possibilities ahead of us. These colleagues had transformed from employment colleagues into business partners, demonstrating loyalty and strategic thinking that far exceeded anything I had expected. The contrast with Marcus's approach was stark. Where he had relied on intimidation and control to maintain his position, my colleagues had chosen collaboration and mutual support to create something better. Where Marcus had focused on extracting maximum profit through questionable methods, we were building a business model based on delivering exceptional value through ethical practices. Meanwhile, Marcus's legal troubles were accelerating as federal investigators expanded their probe into his financial activities. FBI agents had arrived at Pinnacle's offices with search warrants seizing computers, financial records, and communications equipment. The investigation was generating local media coverage that was damaging Marcus's reputation throughout the business community. Marcus had hired a prominent white-collar criminal defense attorney, but the mounting evidence against him was becoming overwhelming. Patricia Hawkins had been cooperating with federal prosecutors, providing detailed documentation of Marcus's fraudulent activities and policy violations. Her cooperation would likely result in reduced charges for her while strengthening the case against Marcus. As our meeting concluded, I understood that we were not simply reacting to Marcus's poor decisions. We were proactively building something better than what we had left behind. Nexus Solutions represented an opportunity to demonstrate that business success could be achieved through integrity, collaboration, and genuine client service, rather than manipulation and fraud. The transition from employed professionals to business founders felt both exhilarating and daunting, but our collective preparation and mutual support provided confidence that we could succeed. Marcus's attempt to demonstrate his power by firing me had inadvertently triggered the creation of a superior competitor that would ultimately prove his approach was both unethical and unsustainable. The transformation of Nexus Solutions from concept to operational reality occurred with remarkable speed as we leveraged our combined expertise and industry relationships. Within 2 weeks of our initial planning meeting, we had secured office space in a modern downtown building just 6 blocks from Pinnacle's headquarters. The symbolic proximity was intentional, demonstrating our confidence and making it clear to the business community that we were establishing ourselves as the credible alternative to Marcus's failing operation. Our new office space reflected the collaborative culture we intended to build. Instead of traditional hierarchical layouts with corner offices and status symbols, we designed an open workspace that encouraged communication and teamwork. Conference rooms had glass walls to promote transparency, and common areas were designed to facilitate both formal meetings and spontaneous collaboration. The client transition process exceeded our most optimistic projections. David Kumar from Global Tech not only terminated Pinnacle's contract, but also recommended our services to 2 other companies in his professional network. His endorsement carried significant weight in the business community, and both referrals resulted in immediate consulting agreements worth a combined $800,000 annually. Elena Rodriguez from Meridian Industries brought similar value through her transition to Nexus Solutions. She introduced us to 3 companies seeking specialized consulting services, and her personal recommendations resulted in contracts totaling $1.2 million in first-year revenue. Elena's satisfaction with our services was becoming a powerful marketing tool within her industry associations. Robert Chen from Apex Corporation provided the most surprising development when he offered Nexus an exclusive partnership agreement to handle all of Apex's consulting needs across multiple divisions. This arrangement would generate $2.8 million annually, while providing predictable long-term revenue that enhanced our business stability and growth planning capabilities. However, Marcus's response to our success revealed the depths of his desperation and poor judgment. Rather than accepting responsibility for the consequences of his actions, he began a systematic campaign to undermine Nexus Solutions through false accusations and legal intimidation tactics. Marcus contacted each of our new clients with lengthy phone calls, claiming that I had engaged in financial misconduct while employed at Pinnacle. He alleged that client funds had been misappropriated, project deliverables had been falsified, and contractual obligations had been deliberately violated. His accusations were specific enough to sound credible, but completely fabricated. He threatened legal action against both our clients and our company, claiming that our consulting agreements violated non-compete clauses and represented theft of proprietary business information. Marcus hired a law firm to send formal cease and desist letters to our clients, demanding immediate termination of their relationships with Nexus Solutions. His interference strategy backfired spectacularly because his accusations were provably false, and his legal threats violated multiple laws and contracts. David Kumar's legal team immediately recognized that Marcus's claims were groundless and constituted defamatory interference with business relationships. They began preparing countersuit documentation against both Marcus personally and Pinnacle as a corporate entity. More damaging to Marcus was that his intimidation campaign violated his existing non-disclosure agreements with clients. His detailed discussions of specific project information and financial arrangements breached confidentiality clauses that exposed him to significant monetary penalties and additional legal liability. The FBI investigators monitoring Marcus's activities took particular interest in his client interference efforts. His attempts to coerce businesses through false accusations and legal threats represented potential obstruction of justice and witness intimidation charges. Federal prosecutors began exploring additional criminal charges related to his post-termination behavior. Meanwhile, the forensic accounting investigation into Marcus's financial crimes was yielding increasingly damaging evidence. Investigators had discovered hidden cryptocurrency accounts containing not only the stolen client bonuses that should have been paid to me, but also substantial amounts from inflated contract billings and other fraudulent schemes. Marcus's attempts to conceal these assets had actually created a more comprehensive paper trail of his criminal activities. Digital currency transactions were permanently recorded on blockchain networks, providing irrefutable evidence of money transfers' timing and amounts. His sophisticated efforts to hide his crimes had inadvertently documented them in unprecedented detail. The business community was responding to these developments with clear support for Nexus Solutions and growing skepticism about Marcus's credibility. Industry publications began profiling our company as an example of ethical leadership emerging from corporate controversy. I received invitations to speak at professional conferences about business ethics, crisis management, and entrepreneurial transitions. These speaking opportunities provided valuable publicity for Nexus Solutions, while enhancing my personal reputation as a thought leader in corporate responsibility. The contrast between Marcus's public breakdown and my professional visibility was becoming obvious throughout our industry, validating our decision to maintain integrity under pressure. New client inquiries were arriving weekly as our reputation spread through professional networks. Companies that had no previous relationship with either Pinnacle or Nexus were seeking our services based on referrals and media coverage. Our client base was expanding beyond our original relationships into new market segments and geographic regions. The talent acquisition process was equally successful as skilled professionals sought opportunities to join our collaborative work environment. Several employees from competing firms requested interviews, attracted by our equity participation model and reputation for ethical business practices. Our selective hiring process allowed us to build a team of exceptional professionals who shared our values and commitment to client service excellence. Lisa Wong's financial projections were proving conservative as our actual revenue and profit margins exceeded her initial estimates. The combination of premium pricing, efficient operations, and low overhead costs was generating healthy profits that we reinvested in technology improvements, employee development, and business expansion initiatives. Amy Foster's employee satisfaction surveys showed exceptionally high engagement levels as team members appreciated the transparency, respect, and growth opportunities that defined our workplace culture. The contrast with traditional corporate environments was attracting talented professionals who valued meaningful work over purely financial compensation. As I reflected on the 6 months since Marcus's explosive decision to fire me, the transformation felt almost surreal. His attempt to assert dominance had triggered a sequence of events that elevated my career, validated my professional approach, and created opportunities that exceeded anything I could have achieved while remaining at Pinnacle. The vindication was profound, but more importantly, the experience had taught me valuable lessons about the power of authentic relationships, ethical leadership, and collaborative problem-solving. Marcus's downfall was the inevitable result of his corrupt practices, while our success reflected the sustainable value of integrity and genuine service to others. The autumn morning when Diana Blackwell contacted federal prosecutors marked the beginning of Marcus's complete downfall, though none of us realized the significance of her decision until weeks later. Diana had been married to Marcus for 12 years, but her loyalty crumbled when she discovered the true extent of his financial crimes and their devastating impact on their family's security. Patricia Hawkins, who had maintained contact with me throughout the federal investigation, explained that Diana's cooperation with authorities was providing prosecutors with the most damaging evidence they had collected. As Marcus's wife, Diana had access to personal financial records, private communications, and first-hand knowledge of his criminal activities that no external investigation could have uncovered. Diana's motivation was both personal and practical. She had discovered that Marcus had been using their joint banking accounts to fund his shell companies without her knowledge or consent. As a co-signer on these accounts, Diana faced potential criminal liability for money laundering and tax evasion unless she could prove her innocence through cooperation with federal investigators. More shocking was Diana's revelation that Marcus had secretly mortgaged their family home, their vacation property, and even his personal investment accounts to cover the cash flow shortfalls created by his fraudulent billing schemes. Their family's entire financial foundation was built on stolen money, and Diana faced the prospect of losing everything when Marcus's crimes were fully prosecuted. Diana provided investigators with detailed records of Marcus's activities over the previous 3 years, including personal communications, where he had explicitly discussed his fraudulent billing strategies and money laundering techniques. Her evidence included recorded phone conversations, email archives, and financial documents that demonstrated the sophisticated nature of his criminal enterprise. The family betrayal deepened when Marcus's business partner Kevin Morrison, who happened to be Diana's brother, discovered his unwitting participation in federal money laundering violations. Kevin had been a silent partner in several of Marcus's shell companies, believing he was investing in legitimate business ventures. When federal investigators contacted Kevin about his financial involvement, he realized that Marcus had been using him as an unwitting accomplice in criminal activities. Kevin's cooperation with federal authorities provided prosecutors with comprehensive records of financial transactions, business formation documents, and operational details about Marcus's criminal network. Kevin's detailed knowledge of the shell company operations filled crucial gaps in the investigators' understanding of how Marcus had systematically defrauded clients and evaded tax obligations. The employee testimony phase of the investigation revealed the true scope of Marcus's unethical business practices beyond the financial crimes. Former Pinnacle employees provided sworn statements describing a pattern of fraudulent client communications, deliberately misleading project reports, and systematic manipulation of billing documentation. These testimonies established that Marcus's criminal activities were not isolated financial schemes, but part of a comprehensive pattern of business fraud that had affected dozens of clients over several years. The evidence demonstrated that his corrupt practices had been escalating in both frequency and sophistication, suggesting that his crimes would have continued expanding without intervention. The civil lawsuit avalanche began when Marcus's criminal charges became public knowledge. Clients who had been victimized by his fraudulent billing practices filed breach of contract suits seeking both actual damages and punitive penalties. The combined value of these civil claims exceeded $8 million, far more than Marcus or Pinnacle possessed in recoverable assets. Vendors who had provided services to Pinnacle while Marcus diverted their payments to personal accounts filed additional lawsuits for unpaid invoices, contract violations, and business relationship damages. Software companies, office service providers, and equipment leasing firms joined the legal action seeking over $2 million in unpaid obligations plus interest and penalties. Former Pinnacle employees filed wrongful termination and wage theft claims when they discovered that Marcus had been systematically underpaying salaries and withholding earned bonuses throughout his tenure as CEO. The Department of Labor launched its own investigation into Pinnacle's employment practices, which could result in significant additional financial penalties and criminal charges. The legal proceedings were generating extensive media coverage that completely vindicated my character and professional reputation while exposing the full extent of Marcus's criminal behavior. Court documents proved definitively that I had been terminated for refusing to participate in illegal activities rather than for any misconduct on my part. The public vindication was personally satisfying, but the professional impact was even more significant. Business leaders throughout our industry were reading detailed accounts of how I had maintained my integrity under pressure, attempted to address problems through appropriate channels, and handled wrongful termination with dignity and professionalism. This media coverage was generating new business opportunities as companies sought to work with consultants who demonstrated ethical leadership under difficult circumstances. Several major corporations contacted Nexus Solutions specifically because they had read about our company's founding principles and commitment to transparent business practices. The industry response to Marcus's downfall was creating opportunities for substantive reform in business practices and oversight procedures. Professional associations were developing new ethical guidelines based partly on the lessons learned from Pinnacle's collapse. Industry publications were using our story as a case study in corporate responsibility and crisis management. My speaking engagements at business conferences were expanding beyond our local market to include national professional organizations and university business schools. These opportunities provided platforms to discuss the importance of ethical leadership, the dangers of unchecked executive power, and the sustainable value of authentic business relationships. The personal growth I experienced throughout this process was as significant as the professional vindication. The crisis had revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed and taught me valuable lessons about resilience leadership and the power of authentic relationships in times of adversity. As federal prosecutors prepared for Marcus's criminal trial, I understood that justice was being served not just through legal proceedings, but through the natural consequences of ethical versus corrupt business practices. Marcus's attempt to destroy my career had ultimately demonstrated the superiority of integrity over intimidation, collaboration over control, and authentic service over fraudulent manipulation. The final resolution was approaching, and I felt confident that the outcome would provide closure for everyone who had been harmed by Marcus's actions, while validating the principles that had guided my response to his attacks. Justice was accelerating toward its inevitable conclusion, and the lessons learned would benefit our entire business community for years to come. The federal courthouse buzzed with media attention on the crisp November morning when Marcus Blackwell entered his guilty plea to 14 federal charges, including wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering conspiracy. I sat in the gallery, watching as the man who had once wielded absolute power over my career stood before the judge, his expensive suit unable to conceal the defeat that radiated from his posture. Marcus's criminal defense attorney had negotiated the plea agreement to avoid a trial that would have resulted in even harsher penalties. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his cooperation with federal authorities in recovering stolen assets was his only opportunity to reduce his prison sentence. Judge Catherine Morrison sentenced Marcus to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. The financial restitution component of his sentence required Marcus to repay all stolen funds to victims, including the $150,000 in unpaid bonuses he had stolen from me, plus accumulated interest and penalties totaling $210,000. Additional restitution payments to defrauded clients brought his total financial obligation to over $4 million, far exceeding any assets he possessed. The civil lawsuit settlements were equally comprehensive. Marcus was required to surrender his personal residence, vacation properties, investment accounts, and luxury possessions to satisfy judgments against him. Pinnacle Tech Solutions was dissolved as a corporate entity, with all remaining assets distributed to creditors and fraud victims through court-supervised proceedings. The personal satisfaction of seeing justice served was profound, but the professional vindication provided even greater long-term value. Court records and media coverage had documented my integrity throughout the crisis, establishing my reputation as a leader who maintained ethical standards under extreme pressure. This reputation became a cornerstone of Nexus Solutions' brand identity and market positioning. Nexus Solutions had exceeded every projection from our original business plan. Within 8 months of incorporation, we had grown to 52 employees, providing services to 37 clients across 12 states. Our annual revenue reached $28 million, with profit margins that reflected our efficient operations and premium service quality. Our client satisfaction scores consistently exceeded industry standards, and our employee engagement surveys showed exceptional workplace satisfaction levels. The collaborative culture we had built attracted talented professionals who valued meaningful work ethical leadership and opportunities for personal growth and financial participation in company success. The industry recognition we received validated our approach to business leadership and corporate responsibility. I was invited to serve on the advisory board of the National Association of Professional Consultants and to chair their ethics committee. These positions provided platforms to advocate for industry-wide reforms in business practices and professional standards. Business schools began using Nexus Solutions as a case study in ethical entrepreneurship, crisis leadership, and sustainable business development. Students analyzed how we had transformed a career crisis into a business opportunity while maintaining integrity throughout the process. These academic discussions elevated our company's reputation and attracted exceptional talent seeking meaningful professional opportunities. The speaking opportunities that emerged from our story allowed me to share lessons about resilience, authentic leadership, and the power of collaborative problem-solving with audiences across the country. Each presentation reinforced the message that ethical business practices create sustainable competitive advantages, while corrupt practices inevitably lead to destruction. The personal transformation I experienced throughout this journey was as significant as the professional success. The crisis had forced me to discover inner strength I didn't know I possessed, and to develop leadership skills that served me well beyond the immediate business context. I learned that authentic relationships built on mutual respect and shared values provide the foundation for both personal fulfillment and professional success. The contrast between Marcus's approach and our approach had been validated through real-world results. His reliance on intimidation control and fraud had led to criminal prosecution, financial ruin, and complete professional destruction. Our emphasis on collaboration, transparency, and genuine service had created sustainable business success and personal satisfaction for everyone involved. The lessons from this experience extended beyond business strategy to fundamental questions about character integrity and the kind of person I wanted to be. The crisis had presented choices between ethical and expedient responses, and the long-term consequences of those choices had proven that integrity creates lasting value while corruption ultimately destroys everything it touches. Looking back on that explosive morning when Marcus fired me in front of the entire management team, I could see how his attempt to assert dominance had actually triggered his own downfall. His need to prove his power through public humiliation had exposed his character flaws to everyone who witnessed the scene. The department heads who walked out with me had been evaluating his leadership for months, and his treatment of me provided the final evidence they needed to make their decision. The relationships I had built through 3 years of authentic collaboration had proven stronger than Marcus's positional authority. When forced to choose between loyalty to him or loyalty to shared values, my colleagues chose values. That choice had created the foundation for everything that followed. The federal investigation that ultimately destroyed Marcus had been triggered not by my actions, but by his own criminal behavior. My refusal to participate in his fraudulent schemes had protected me from criminal liability, while his escalating crimes had attracted law enforcement attention. Justice had been served not through revenge, but through the natural consequences of ethical versus corrupt choices. As I stood in my corner office at Nexus Solutions, looking out at the downtown skyline where Pinnacle's former headquarters sat empty and abandoned, I felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this point. The crisis that had seemed devastating at the time had actually been the catalyst for greater success, deeper relationships, and more meaningful work than I had ever imagined possible. The experience had taught me that when people abuse power to tear others down, they often end up destroying themselves instead. True leadership comes from building others up, creating value for clients and colleagues, and maintaining integrity even under pressure. The greatest victories emerge not from defeating enemies, but from staying true to your principles when those principles are tested. Marcus's story served as a cautionary tale about the inevitable consequences of corruption, while our story demonstrated that ethical leadership creates opportunities for everyone involved to succeed together. The choice between these approaches shapes not only business outcomes, but also personal character and the kind of legacy we leave for others to follow. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to use their power to intimidate or silence you? How did you respond, and what did that experience teach you about standing up for your principles? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for following this journey with me. Remember that your integrity is your most valuable asset, and staying true to your values will always lead to better outcomes than compromising your principles for short-term advantages. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges, and share it with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for what's right. Your support means everything to me, and I hope these stories help you navigate your own professional challenges with confidence and integrity. Until next time, stay strong, stay ethical, and remember that doing the right thing will always lead you to where you need to be.